The choosing ceremony happens once every 100 years. That is what the scrolls say. And if the scrolls are to be believed, then the woman standing before the Alpha King should count herself blessed. She does not look blessed. She looks like she wants to tear his throat out with her bare hands. The great hall of Valcrest holds its breath. 300 nobles, 50 warriors, 12 elders, and 1 king, all watching the impossible unfold. Alpha King Valdric Cravath extends his hand. His voice carries across the stone chamber, deep and final. You have been chosen. Take my hand, and your people will be spared. The woman does not move. She is thin from months of imprisonment, her dark hair tangled, her silver-gray eyes blazing with something no captive should possess. Defiance, pure, undiluted defiance. I would rather die, she says, than bond with the man who burned my kingdom to ash. She spits at his feet. The silence that follows is the kind that precedes executions. Guards reach for their swords. Nobles recoil. The king's jaw tightens, and everyone in that hall knows what comes next. No one insults the Alpha King and lives. But then, something strange happens. Elder Magister Helwyn steps forward, her ancient face draining of color. Her hands tremble as she reaches toward the woman, not to strike, but to examine. She grabs the woman's wrist, turns it over, and freezes. A mark. Faint, silvery, shaped like a crescent moon. Helwyn falls to her knees. One by one, the other elders follow. 12 of the most powerful figures in the kingdom, kneeling before a prisoner in chains. The king stares. The court stares. And the woman, Vira of Solvania, stares back at all of them, utterly confused. What is the meaning of this? Valdric demands. Helwyn's voice shakes. She is the last one, Your Majesty, the last of the silver blood. A pause. Without her, we all die. Vera had not always been a prisoner. 3 years ago, she had been the youngest healer in Solvania's Western Temple. She had woken before dawn to grind herbs, spent her afternoons treating fevers and mending bones, and fallen asleep each night to the sound of her mother humming in the next room. That was before the wolves came down from the northern mountains, before the fires, before everything she loved turned to smoke and screaming. Now she sat in a stone cell beneath the palace of the man who had ordered it all, and she counted the cracks in the ceiling because counting was better than remembering. 17 cracks. She had been here for nearly a year. 11 months of stone walls and stale bread, and the same question asked over and over. The guards changed every 8 hours. The food came twice a day. Thin broth, hard crusts, sometimes a bruised apple if the kitchen girl felt generous. Vera had stopped eating the apples. Kindness in this place always came with a price. The lock clicked. She did not look up. Looking up meant caring, and caring meant hoping, and hope was the most dangerous thing a prisoner could carry. On your feet. The guard's voice was sharp. You've been summoned. I've been summoned every week for 11 months, Vera replied, still staring at the ceiling. The king asks if I'll bond with him. I say no. He sends me back. We can skip the ceremony if you'd like. Save everyone the trouble. The guard grabbed her arm and hauled her upright. Not this time. Today is the choosing. Something cold slid through Vera's chest. The choosing. She had heard whispers about it, an ancient rite where the Alpha King selected his Luna before the entire court. A political spectacle disguised as tradition. She had assumed they would not bother with her. She was nothing. A healer from a conquered kingdom, a prisoner who refused to break. Apparently, she had assumed wrong. They dragged her through corridors she had never seen, marble floors, tapestries depicting wolves mid-hunt, chandeliers dripping with crystal that caught the torchlight and scattered it like frozen fire. Everything in this palace was designed to intimidate, to remind you that you were small and the Cravath dynasty was eternal. Vera refused to be impressed. They stopped before a massive door carved with the sigil of House Cravath, a wolf's head wreathed in thorns. The guard knocked twice. The door swung open and Vira was shoved inside. The great hall stretched before her like a cathedral. Columns rose toward a ceiling painted with constellations. Nobles lined the walls in silk and velvet, their faces a blur of judgment and curiosity. At the far end, on a throne carved from black stone, sat the Alpha King, Valdric Cravath. She had seen him only once before, on the day her kingdom fell. He had ridden through the burning streets on a war horse the color of midnight, his armor slicked with blood, his face expressionless as he surveyed the destruction. She had been hiding beneath a collapsed beam, her mother's body still warm beside her. She had never forgotten his face. Now that face watched her approach, with eyes the color of deep winter, pale blue, almost silver, cold as the glaciers that bordered his kingdom. He was beautiful. She hated that she noticed. Veyra of Sylvania, a herald announced, survivor of the Southern Conquest, healer of the Moon Temple. The titles felt like accusations. Veyra lifted her chin and walked forward. The chains on her wrists clinked with every step. She would not shuffle. She would not cower. If this was to be her final performance, she would give them something to remember. She stopped at the base of the throne and met the king's gaze directly. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Prisoners did not look at kings. Valdric leaned forward slightly. "You know why you are here." "To be humiliated," Veyra replied. "Publicly. To be chosen." "I decline." Another ripple. Louder this time. The king's expression did not change, but something flickered in those frozen eyes. "You have not heard the terms." "I do not need to." He rose from the throne. He was taller than she remembered, tall and broad and radiating the kind of power that made the air feel heavier. He descended the steps slowly, deliberately, until he stood before her. Close enough to touch, close enough to kill. "Your people," he said quietly. "The survivors in my work camps, the children in my orphanages, the elders in my prisons, all of them, freed. Return to what remains of your homeland. Allowed to rebuild." Veyra's heart stuttered. "All you have to do," the king continued, "is take my hand." He extended it. The hall went silent. Veyra stared at his hand, scarred, calloused, and steady. The hand of a conqueror, the hand of a killer. She thought of her mother's humming. She thought of the temple bells at dawn. She thought of children in work camps and elders dying in cells just like hers. Then she thought of bonding with him, of belonging to him, of bearing his mark on her soul for eternity. "I would rather die," she said, "than bond with the man who burned my kingdom to ash." She spat at his feet, and the elders began to kneel. The king did not understand what he was seeing. Valdric Cravath had ruled Valcrest for 12 years. He had fought in wars, crushed rebellions, and held his dying father's hand while the old king whispered the secrets of their bloodline. He had seen many strange things. He had never seen the Elder Council kneel for anyone but him. "Magister Helwyn," Valdric said, his voice dangerously calm, "explain." The old woman remained on her knees, her gnarled fingers still wrapped around the prisoner's wrist. When she looked up, her face held something Valdric had never witnessed in all his years of council meetings. Fear. Not the political fear of displeasing a king, not the careful fear of making a wrong move. This was primal, ancient. The fear of someone staring into an abyss. "The mark, Your Majesty." Helwyn's voice cracked. "The crescent moon. I thought the bloodline was extinct. We all did. After the purge 3 centuries ago, there were no survivors. None." Valdric looked at the prisoner, Veyra, who was staring at her own wrist like she had never seen it before. "Speak plainly," Valdric ordered. "She is silver blood." Helwyn released the woman's wrist and pressed her forehead to the floor. "The last of the moon-touched line, the only one who can end the withering." The great hall erupted. Nobles gasped. Warriors exchanged glances. Someone dropped a goblet, and the clang of metal on marble echoed through the chaos. Valdric felt the words land in his chest like a blade. The withering. It had started 8 months ago, a sickness that no healer could explain. Wolves losing control of their shifts, warriors trapped between forms howling in agony, children who had never shifted at all, their wolves dying inside them before they could ever emerge. At first it had been isolated, a village here, a camp there, easy to dismiss as coincidence. Then it spread. Now entire regions were affected. His strongest commanders were bedridden. His armies were weakening. And the healers, every single one of them, had no answers. The elders had spoken of an old prophecy, a verse carved into the foundation stones of the first temple. They had dismissed it as myth. Valdric had dismissed it with them. When the wolves forget their nature and the moon turns her face away, only the silver blood can call her back. Only the bride who chooses the thorn can heal what hatred has broken. He had thought it was poetry, symbolism. He looked at Vera. She was still staring at her wrist, her expression cycling through confusion, denial, and something that looked like horror. "I am not silver blood," she said. "I am a healer, a commoner. My mother was a weaver. My father was a—" "Your mother was not your mother." Helwyn rose slowly, her ancient joints protesting. "Or rather, she was not your birth mother." The Moon Temple took in foundlings, orphans with nowhere else to go. Her eyes fixed on Vera with unsettling intensity. "You were brought to them as an infant. No one knew where you came from. No one asked." Vera shook her head. "No, you are lying. The mark does not lie. Marks can be forged, painted. You are trying to—" "Enough." Valdric's voice cut through the hall. Silence crashed down. He stepped closer to Vera, studying her face, the silver-gray eyes, the sharp cheekbones, the way she held herself even in chains, like a queen stripped of her crown but not her spine. He had conquered her kingdom because he'd had no choice. The Sylvanians had been harboring his enemies, funneling weapons to rebel factions, threatening the stability he had spent a decade building. War was never clean. He had accepted that long ago. But standing here now, looking at this woman who hated him with every fiber of her being, he felt something he had not felt in years. Uncertainty. "If what Helwyn says is true," Valdric said slowly, "then you are the only person alive who can stop a plague that is killing my people. Your people." Vera laughed bitterly. "Your people burned my temple. Your people murdered my mother. Your people—" "My people are dying." He let the words fall heavy. Thousands of them, children, elders, warriors who have served this kingdom for generations. The withering does not care about borders or politics. It is killing everyone. Something flickered in her eyes. Just for a moment, he pressed forward. "I am not asking you to forgive me. I am not asking you to love me or even tolerate me. I am asking you to save innocent lives. Can you truly refuse that?" Vera's jaw tightened. Her chains rattled as her hands curled into fists. "You want me to bond with you," she said, "to become your Luna, your property. I want you to consider that perhaps your hatred of me matters less than the survival of thousands. Hatred is all I have left." Her voice broke on the last word, just slightly. "You took everything else." Valdric felt it then. The weight of what he had done. Not the strategic calculations or the military necessities. The human cost. Standing right in front of him, wrapped in chains, burning with a grief that would probably never heal. He stepped back. "She will be given chambers in the East Wing," he announced to the hall. "She is no longer a prisoner. She is a guest of the crown." "Your Majesty," one of the counselors started. "A guest," Valdric repeated. "She will be treated with respect. Anyone who harms her, threatens her, or so much as looks at her wrong will answer to me personally." He turned back to Vera. "You do not have to decide tonight, but you will see what the withering has done. You will see my people suffering, and then you will tell me that your hatred matters more than their lives." He walked past her, toward the doors at the back of the hall. He did not look back. But he heard her voice, quiet and sharp, carrying across the marble. "And if I still refuse?" Valdric paused. He did not turn around. "Then we all die," he said, starting with the children. The doors closed behind him. They gave her a room fit for a queen, silk curtains in deep blue, a bed larger than her entire cell, a fireplace crackling with warmth, a window overlooking the palace gardens, where snow dusted the hedges like powdered sugar. Vera stood in the center of it all and felt nothing. Guest. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. She was not a guest. She was a tool they had suddenly realized they needed. The chains were gone from her wrists, but new ones, invisible and far heavier, had taken their place. A knock at the door. "Go away," Vera said. The door opened anyway. A boy stood in the doorway. Small, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, with a mess of copper hair and eyes too large for his thin face. He was carrying a tray of food that looked comically oversized in his small hands. "I'm not supposed to go away," he said matter-of-factly. "Magister Helwyn said you need to eat." "Magister Helwyn can—" Vera stopped herself. The boy was watching her with earnest curiosity, completely unafraid. "Who are you?" "Bram." He walked in without invitation and set the tray on a small table by the window. "I work in the kitchens. Well, mostly I just peel things. Potatoes, carrots. Once I peeled a whole basket of onions and cried for an hour." Despite herself, Vera felt her lips twitch. "Why are you bringing me food?" "Because Magister Helwyn said you're important now." Bram plopped down in one of the chairs like he owned it. "She said you can fix everything. Is that true?" "No." "Oh." He considered this. "But you have the silver mark. I heard the kitchen women talking about it. They said it means you're blessed by the moon." Vera looked at her wrist. The crescent was faint, barely visible, a birthmark she had never thought twice about. Her mother had always said it was a kissed mark, a sign that she was loved. Her mother had lied about many things, it seemed. "I'm not blessed," Vera said quietly. "I'm cursed." Bram tilted his head. "Why?" "Because everyone wants something from me. Because I am being asked to save the people who destroyed everything I loved. Because I do not know who I am anymore." She said none of this. "It's complicated." Grown-ups always say that. Bram swung his legs, his feet not reaching the floor. "My mum used to say it too, before she got sick." Vera's chest tightened. "Sick?" The withering. His voice stayed light, but his eyes did not. "She can't shift anymore. The healers say her wolf is dying. She sleeps all the time now. Sometimes she doesn't remember my name." Silence. Vera looked at this boy. This small, bright-eyed boy who peeled onions and brought trays to strangers and spoke about his mother's slow death like it was weather. "I'm sorry," she said. The words felt inadequate. Bram shrugged. "It's not your fault." A pause. "But you could fix it. If you wanted to." That's what they said. The accusation was unintentional. That made it worse. Vera turned away. "You should go. Your kitchen will miss you." "Will you eat first?" "I'm not hungry." Bram was quiet for a moment. Then she heard him stand, his small feet padding toward the door. "My mom always said food tastes better when you're sad," he said, "because it reminds you that good things still exist, even when everything else is bad." The door clicked shut. Vera stared at the tray. Fresh bread. A bowl of stew. A small apple bruised on one side. She did not touch any of it. The summons came 2 hours later. A servant, not Bram, led her through winding corridors to a part of the palace she had not seen. The walls here were older, the stones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The air smelled different. Medicinal. Sharp. They stopped before a heavy wooden door. "The infirmary ward," the servant said. "The king requested you see it." Vera pushed the door open. The smell hit her first. Sickness and herbs and something else. Something wrong. The wolf in her, dormant since her imprisonment, stirred uneasily. Rows of beds stretched before her, dozens of them, and in each bed, a body. Some were shifting uncontrollably, caught between wolf and human, their bones cracking and reforming in endless agonizing cycles. Some lay utterly still, their breathing so shallow she could not tell if they were alive. Some were children, small and pale, their eyes staring at nothing. A woman walked among them, a healer by her robes. She moved from bed to bed, checking pulses, adjusting blankets, murmuring words that could not possibly help. Vera stepped forward. She could not help it. This was what she had trained for. This was who she was. "How long has it been like this?" she asked the healer. The woman turned. Her face was drawn, exhausted. "Weeks. Months. It varies. Some hold on longer than others." She looked at Vera with eyes that held no hope. "You're the silver blood they found." "So they say." "Can you help them?" Vera opened her mouth. To say no, to say she did not know, to say she wanted nothing to do with any of this. A small hand grabbed hers. She looked down. A girl, perhaps 5 years old, dark hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, eyes clouded with pain. "It hurts," the girl whispered. "The wolf inside me. She's screaming." Vera knelt. Her hands moved without permission, checking the child's pulse, feeling the feverish heat of her skin. The healer's instincts took over, drowning out everything else. "What's your name?" Vera asked. "Mira." "Mira, that's beautiful. I'm Vera." "Can you make it stop hurting?" Vera looked into those clouded eyes and felt something fracture behind her ribs. "I don't know," she said. "Honest. Terrible." Mira's grip tightened. "Please try." From the doorway, a voice spoke. "Will you still tell me that your hatred matters more than this?" Vera turned. King Valdric stood in the shadows watching her. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those pale winter eyes, held something she had not seen before. Desperation. Vera looked back at Mira, at the rows of beds, at the healer who had no more answers, at the suffering that stretched in every direction like an endless winter. She stood slowly. "I will not bond with you," she said to the king, "but I will try to help them." Valdric exhaled. The relief on his face was so brief she almost missed it. "That is all I ask. For now," Vera added. Her voice hardened. "But understand this, Your Majesty. If I succeed, I walk free. No chains, no ceremonies, no claims on my life. That is my price." The king was silent for a long moment. "And if you fail?" he asked. Vera looked at Mira, still reaching for her from the bed. "Then none of this will matter anyway," she said, "because we'll all be dead." The king nodded once, and somewhere deep in the palace, the elders began to whisper about prophecies that demanded far more than either of them understood. Valdric had not slept in 3 days. This was not unusual. Sleep had become a luxury he could not afford. Not with the withering spreading, not with his council fracturing into factions, not with the weight of a dying kingdom pressing down on his shoulders like a physical thing. But tonight, something else kept him awake. He stood at the window of his private study, watching the moon cast silver light across the snow-covered gardens. Somewhere in the East Wing, a woman who hated him was sleeping in silk sheets, and tomorrow she would try to do what no healer had managed in 8 months. She would probably fail. He had seen 23 healers try. 23 brilliant minds, trained in every tradition from the northern monasteries to the southern temples. All of them had failed. All of them had eventually stopped meeting his eyes, stopped making promises, and stopped pretending there was hope. And yet, the way Vera had knelt beside that child, the way her hands had moved, instinctive, sure, gentle. The way Mira had reached for her like she was already someone safe. Valdric turned away from the window. He should not be thinking about her. He should be thinking about supply lines, troop movements, the latest reports from the eastern provinces. He should be thinking about the trade negotiations with Corveth or the border skirmishes with the mountain clans. Instead, he was thinking about silver-gray eyes and the way her voice had cracked when she said hatred was all she had left. A knock at the door. Enter. Elder Magister Helwyn shuffled in, her ancient face shadowed by candlelight. She moved slowly these days. The withering had touched her too, though she refused to admit it. You should be resting, Your Majesty. So should you. Helwyn lowered herself into a chair without being invited. She was perhaps the only person in the kingdom who could take such liberties. She had been his father's advisor, his grandfather's teacher, the keeper of secrets that spanned generations. The girl, Helwyn said. She agreed to help. She agreed to try. Valdric sat across from her. There's a difference. It is more than we had yesterday. Is it? He leaned forward. Tell me honestly, Magister, the prophecy. The silver blood. Is this real, or are we grasping at myths because we have nothing else? Helwyn was quiet for a long moment. The silver blood is real, she said finally. The line existed. The purge 3 centuries ago was meant to eradicate them entirely. Our ancestors feared their power, feared what they could do. The wolves who carried moon-touched blood could heal in ways that defied nature. They could also destroy. Destroy how? The old texts are unclear, but they speak of balance. The silver blood could restore what was broken, but only through sacrifice. Only through... She hesitated. Through what? Through bonding. Helwyn's eyes met his. The prophecy is specific, Your Majesty. The bride who chooses the thorn. Chooses. The silver blood must willingly bond with a king whose line has caused great suffering. Only then can the withering be reversed. Valdric felt something cold settle in his stomach. She will never choose me willingly. No, Helwyn agreed. She will not. Then what is the point? He stood abruptly, pacing. Why tell me this? Why give me hope only to... Because there are other ways. Helwyn's voice dropped. Older ways. Rituals that could bind her to you without consent. The council is already discussing it. High Counselor Draveth has been quite vocal. Valdric stopped. No. Your Majesty. I said no. His voice echoed off the stone walls. I will not force a bond on an unwilling woman. I will not become... He stopped. The words caught in his throat. Helwyn watched him with something that might have been respect. Become what, Your Majesty? My father. The words hung unspoken between them. Leave me, Valdric said quietly. I need to think. Helwyn rose slowly. At the door, she paused. She is remarkable, you know. The girl. I watched her with the patients today. She has a gift that goes beyond training. A pause. She also has every reason to let us all die. The fact that she didn't walk away, that tells you something about her character. The door closed. Valdric stood alone in the candlelight, thinking about a woman who had every right to hate him, and wondering if he had already destroyed any chance of earning something else. The next morning, he went to the infirmary. He told himself it was inspection. A king should know the state of his people. A king should be present in times of crisis. He did not admit, even to himself, that he wanted to see her. Vera was bent over a patient when he entered. An elderly man whose bones were caught mid-shift, frozen in a grotesque arch. She was speaking softly, her hands pressed against his chest, her eyes closed in concentration. Valdric watched. There was something happening, something he could not see but could almost feel, a warmth in the air, a faint shimmer around her fingertips. The man's breathing eased, his twisted limbs relaxed, just slightly. Vera exhaled and opened her eyes. They were not silver-gray anymore. They were glowing. Faintly, like moonlight through clouds. Then she saw Valdric, and the glow vanished. Your Majesty. Her voice was flat. Come to check on your investment? Come to see if you needed anything. I need you to leave. You're distracting. A nearby healer made a choking sound. Valdric almost smiled. Almost. What did you just do? He asked instead. To that man. Vera wiped her hands on a cloth. I don't know. It's instinct. Something inside me knows what to do, even when I don't. Is it working? She looked at the rows of beds, at the suffering that stretched in every direction. Slowly, she admitted. Too slowly. I can ease the pain. I can slow the progression, but I cannot stop it. Not yet. What do you need? She turned to face him fully. In the pale morning light, she looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, tension in every line of her body. I need access to your archives, the old texts, everything your ancestors knew about the silver blood and the moon rituals. Done? She blinked. Just like that? Did you expect me to refuse? I expected conditions, negotiations, political maneuvering. Valdric stepped closer, not threatening, just close enough to speak quietly. I am many things, Vira of Sylvania, but I am not a fool. If you need something to save my people, you will have it. No conditions, no price. She studied his face, searching for the lie, the trap, and the hidden blade. You burned my kingdom, she said. You killed my people. You held me prisoner for nearly a year. Yes. And now you offer me unlimited access to your deepest secrets. Why? Because my people are dying. He held her gaze. And because I am starting to realize that I have done terrible things to someone who did not deserve them. Silence stretched between them. That is not an apology, Vera said finally. No, Valdric agreed. An apology would be insufficient. But it is a beginning. He turned and walked away before she could respond. Behind him, he heard her exhale, a sound that might have been frustration or might have been something else entirely. 3 weeks passed. Vera fell into a rhythm she had not expected to find. She woke before dawn, ate whatever Bram brought her. The boy had appointed himself her personal servant despite her protests, and spent her days in the infirmary or the archives. The archives were a revelation. Deep beneath the palace, carved into the living rock of the mountain, they held scrolls and texts older than the kingdom itself. Vera read until her eyes burned, learning the history of her own bloodline, the power, the persecution, the eventual slaughter. The silver blood had been healers beyond compare. They had also been dangerous. The old kings had feared them, feared what they could do if they ever turned against the throne. So they had hunted them, killed them, erased them from history. Except for her. Somehow, impossibly, she had survived. You're thinking too hard again. Vera looked up. Bram was perched on a stack of ancient texts, swinging his legs. Those are older than your entire family line, she said. You shouldn't sit on them. They're dusty. Someone should sit on them. He tilted his head. Did you find what you need? No. Vera rubbed her eyes. The texts describe the bonding ritual in detail. How the silver blood must willingly choose a king whose line has caused great harm. How the bond creates a channel for the healing to flow through. That sounds simple. It requires me to bond with King Valdric. Oh. Bram considered this. Is that bad? He destroyed my home, killed my people, imprisoned me for months. But he's being nice now. Being nice does not erase what he did. Bram was quiet for a moment. Then, with the devastating simplicity of a child, he said, My mum says people can change. She says the person you are today doesn't have to be the person you were yesterday. Your mother sounds very wise. She is. His voice softened. She's also getting worse. The healers say maybe another month, maybe less. Vera felt the words land like stones. Bram, I'm not saying it to make you feel bad. He looked at her directly. I'm saying it because if there's any chance at all, that you could save her, I need you to take it. Even if it means doing something hard. Vera opened her mouth, closed it. What could she say? That her pride mattered more than his mother's life? That her hatred was more important than a little boy keeping his family? I'm trying, she said finally. I promise you, Bram. I'm trying. He nodded solemnly. Then he hopped off the books and headed for the door. The king asked me to tell you dinner is served in the small hall. He said you've skipped 3 meals and you need to eat, or you'll collapse. He said collapse? He said exhausted. I added collapse because it's more dramatic. Despite everything, Vera smiled. Dinner was awkward. The small hall was intimate, a round table, a crackling fire, no servants except those who brought the food. Just Vera, King Valdric, and the weight of everything between them. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Valdric said, "The reports from the eastern provinces are worse." Vera paused mid-bite. How much worse? 2 more villages completely affected. The local alpha lost control of his shift and killed 3 of his own pack before they brought him down. She set down her fork. I'm working as fast as I can. I know. He sounded tired, different from the cold conqueror she had first met. I am not blaming you. I am simply informing you. Why? Because you deserve to know what we're facing. All of it. He met her eyes. You are not a prisoner here anymore, Vera. You are not a tool to be used and discarded. If we are going to fight this, we fight it together. As equals. Her breath caught slightly. She ignored it. We are not equals. You are a king. I am a captive you happen to need. You were a captive. Now you are... He paused, searching for the word. Something else. What? He did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter than she had ever heard it. When I was 9 years old, my father made me watch an execution. A lord who had betrayed the crown. My father said a king must be willing to deal death with his own hands, or he was not fit to rule. Vera said nothing. I refused to watch. I closed my eyes. Valdric's jaw tightened. My father had me beaten. Not by servants. He did it himself. He said weakness was a disease that had to be cut out before it spread. The fire crackled. I learned to stop closing my eyes. Valdric continued. I learned to be what he wanted me to be. A conqueror. A weapon. A king who never flinched, never hesitated, never showed mercy. And the conquest of Sylvania? Vera asked. Her voice was harder than she intended. Was a military necessity. Your kingdom was harboring rebels who had already killed hundreds of my people. My advisors recommended complete annihilation. I chose occupation instead. He looked at her directly. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am only telling you that every choice I made, every terrible choice, felt like the only option at the time. Silence. That does not make it right, Vera said finally. No, it doesn't. But you're trying to do better now. He nodded slowly. I am trying. Vera picked up her fork. The food tasted different now. Not better. Just different. The boy, she said. Bram. His mother is dying. I know. Serena. She worked in the kitchens for 15 years. You know her name? I know all their names. Valdric's voice was heavy. Every single person dying in that infirmary. I made myself memorize them. It seemed like the least I could do. A small fissure opened in the wall she had built. She said nothing. But when she left dinner that night, she did not feel quite as certain about anything as she had before. It happened 3 nights later. Vera was in the archives, searching for a passage she half remembered when she heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Not Bram's light padding or Valdric's measured stride. She turned. High Counselor Draveth stood in the doorway. He was an older man, silver-haired, sharp-featured, with eyes like chips of ice. She had seen him at council meetings, always watching, always calculating. Lady Vera. His smile did not reach his eyes. Working late, I see. I was not aware anyone else visited the archives. I have Scholarly interests. He stepped inside, his gaze moving over the texts spread across her table. You've been reading about the old rituals. As requested by the king? Yes. The king. Draveth's voice carried an edge. He seems quite taken with you. Vera's instincts prickled. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? He moved closer. A conquered woman, suddenly elevated to guest status, given access to the kingdom's deepest secrets, allowed to work unsupervised among our most vulnerable citizens. I am trying to help. Are you? Draveth stopped an arm's length away. Or are you waiting for the right moment to destroy us from within? I am a healer. You are a Sylvanian. The word dripped with contempt. Your people have always been our enemies, centuries of conflict, centuries of hatred, and we're supposed to believe you'll save us out of the goodness of your heart? Vera stood her ground. Believe what you want. My work speaks for itself. Your work. Draveth laughed softly. You ease a few symptoms. You slow the progression. But you haven't cured anyone, have you? Perhaps because you can't. Or perhaps because you won't. Get out. His eyes narrowed. Be careful, healer. You have no protectors here. The king's favor is fickle, and when you fail, and you will fail, there will be no one to shield you from the consequences. He turned and walked out. Vera stood in the silent archives, her heart pounding. Something was wrong here. Something beyond the withering, beyond the dying patients, beyond her own complicated feelings. High Counselor Draveth was not simply suspicious. He was afraid of her succeeding. Why would anyone want the withering to continue? The answer came on a night of full moon. Vera had been working in the archives for hours, cross-referencing texts, following threads that seemed to lead nowhere, but something Draveth had said kept nagging at her. Centuries of conflict, centuries of hatred. She had assumed the withering was natural, a plague, a curse, something beyond anyone's control. But what if it wasn't? She pulled another text from the shelves. This one was old, the leather cracked, the pages brittle with age. It was written in the old tongue, a language she had learned in the temple but rarely used. She read, and read, and her blood turned to ice. The withering is not born, it is made. The ritual requires 3 components: the blood of a silver blood, willingly or unwillingly given, the corrupted blessing of an elder magister, and a vessel through which the sickness can spread. Once begun, the withering cannot be stopped except by the very power that created it, the full bond between silver blood and throne. Vera's hands trembled. Someone had created the withering, deliberately, using her blood. But she had never given her blood willingly. When could anyone have? The imprisonment. Nearly a year in a cell. Months of thin broth and stale bread and occasional apples. The apples. Someone had been drugging her food, taking her blood while she was unconscious. She thought of the kitchen girl who had seemed so kind. The bruised apples that came irregularly, without pattern. She thought of Draveth's cold smile. There will be no one to shield you from the consequences. He wasn't afraid of her succeeding because he wanted her to fail. He was afraid because he had caused the withering in the first place, and she was the only one who could prove it. Vera stood abruptly. She needed to tell Valdric. She needed to... The door burst open. 2 guards stood in the doorway. Behind them, High Counselor Draveth. There she is. His voice carried false regret. I warned His Majesty, but he wouldn't listen. The Sylvanian has been poisoning our patients. I have evidence. That's a lie. Vera stepped back. You created the withering. You used my blood. The ramblings of a desperate criminal. Draveth shook his head. Seize her. The guards moved forward. Vira ran. She made it 3 steps before hands grabbed her arms, her shoulders, her hair. She fought, kicked and twisted and screamed, but there were too many of them. They dragged her through corridors she half recognized, downstairs into darkness, into the cells she knew too well. The door slammed shut. Vyra pressed her hands against the cold stone and tried to breathe. Think. She had to think. Draveth had created the Withering. That meant he had access to her blood, access to the old rituals, access to an Elder Magister. The corrupted blessing of an Elder Magister. Helwyn. It had to be Helwyn. She was the only one old enough, powerful enough, trusted enough. But why? Why would Draveth want to destroy his own kingdom? Unless he didn't want to destroy it. Unless he wanted to control it. The pieces clicked into place. The Withering weakened the Alpha King's power. It killed his warriors, crippled his armies, and undermined his authority. A desperate king might do anything to save his people, including stepping aside. Draveth didn't want Vyra to cure the Withering. He wanted to use the Withering to take the throne. And the only thing standing in his way was a Sylvanian healer who had figured out the truth. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time moved strangely in the dark. The lock clicked. Vyra pressed herself against the far wall, expecting guards, expecting Draveth, and expecting death. Bram's face appeared in the torchlight. "You have to come with me," he whispered. "Right now." "Bram, how did you—" "I borrowed the keys." He held up a heavy ring. "The guards are changing shifts. We have maybe 3 minutes. They'll catch us. Then we'll be fast." He grabbed her hand. "Please. The king doesn't know what happened. He thinks you ran away. Draveth told everyone you disappeared because you were guilty." Vera's chest tightened. "Valdric believes that?" "I don't know. But he looked—" Bram paused, searching for the word. "Broken." Like someone told him something he didn't want to hear. Broken. She thought of their dinners together. Of his confession about his father. Of the way he had started to look at her. Like she might be something other than an enemy. "Where are you taking me?" "The king's chambers. Through the servants' passages." Bram tugged her forward. "Come on. Before they notice." They moved through darkness. Narrow corridors, steep stairs, passages that smelled of dust and disuse. Bram navigated them with the confidence of someone who had spent his life being invisible. Finally, they stopped before a small door. "Through here," Bram whispered. "I can't come with you. If they find me, go." Vera squeezed his hand. "And Bram, thank you." He smiled, a quick, bright thing, and vanished into the darkness. Vera pushed open the door. Valdric's private chambers were dimly lit. A fire burned low in the hearth. Shadows draped across familiar furniture. The desk where he worked, the chairs where they had once sat together. He stood at the window, his back to her. He did not turn around. "So it's true," he said quietly. "You ran." "I was taken." Vera stepped forward. "Draveth had me arrested, thrown into a cell. He's been lying to you." Valdric turned. His face was devastated. That was the only word for it. Not angry, not cold, devastated. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I know who created the Withering." Silence. "Draveth," Vera continued. "He used my blood. While I was imprisoned, someone was drugging my food, taking blood while I was unconscious. The Withering isn't natural. It's a ritual. A weapon." Valdric's expression flickered. "That's impossible." "Is it?" She moved closer. "Think about it. The timing. The Withering started 8 months ago, 3 months after I was first imprisoned. It spread from the capital outward. From here, where my blood was being collected. And Draveth has been blocking every attempt to cure it. He didn't want me to succeed. He wanted me to fail. Why? What could he possibly— The throne." Vera's voice hardened. "A weakened king is a vulnerable king. If the Withering continues, if your people lose faith, if your warriors can't fight, someone else could seize power. Someone patient. Someone who's been planning this for years." Valdric was very still. "You're saying my own High Counselor orchestrated a plague that has killed thousands of my people? For power?" "Yes. And you expect me to believe this based on the word of a woman who has every reason to hate me. Vera met his eyes. I do hate you, she said. Part of me will probably always hate you. But I would never let innocent people die to satisfy my own vengeance. That's not who I am. Something shifted in his face. The archives, Vera continued. The text that describes the ritual. It's still there. I can show you exactly how the withering was created and exactly how to stop it. How? Vera hesitated. This was the moment. The truth she had been avoiding for weeks. The full bond, she said quietly. Between Silverblood and Throne, between me and you. That's the only thing powerful enough to reverse what Dreveth has done. Valdric stared at her. You said you would never— I know what I said. Vera's voice cracked. But your people are dying. Bram's mother is dying. Children who never hurt anyone are dying. And if bonding with you is the only way to save them— She stopped. Valdric crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. He stopped just short of touching her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, see the raw emotion in his eyes. Not like this, he said. Not because you have no choice. Not because I backed you into a corner. I don't want your sacrifice. His voice was rough. He stopped himself. What? Vera whispered. What do you want? The fire crackled. Outside, the moon hung full and silver in the sky, and somewhere in the palace, an alarm began to sound. The alarm meant fire. Valdric knew that sound. 3 sharp blasts, then continuous ringing. He had heard it only twice in his reign, both times during attempted sieges. But there was no siege tonight. Stay here, he told Vera, already moving toward the door. No. She caught his arm. Dreveth knows I escaped. This is him. This is his move. All the more reason for you to— The door exploded inward. Valdric shifted on instinct, bones cracking, muscles reforming, the familiar agony of transformation compressed into a single heartbeat. His wolf surged forward, massive and black-furred, placing itself between Vira and the doorway. But the figures who entered were not guards. They were wolves, twisted, wrong wolves. Their eyes were glazed white, their movements jerky and violent, foam dripping from their jaws. The withering had taken them completely. No humanity left, only rage. Behind them, High Counselor Dreveth smiled. I wondered how long it would take you to figure it out, he said, stepping carefully around his monstrous creations. The Solvanian is cleverer than I gave her credit for. Valdric snarled. Oh, don't bother. Dreveth raised his hand, and the twisted wolves went still. These beauties obey only me now. A useful side effect of the ritual. The withering doesn't just kill, it creates. An army of wolves with no will of their own. Perfect soldiers. You're insane. Vera's voice came from behind Valdric. You've killed thousands of your own people. Necessary losses. Dreveth shrugged. The kingdom was stagnant under his rule. Too much peace, too much softness. The old ways demanded strength, demanded conquest. And your king here decided to stop expanding, stop fighting, and stop being what we were meant to be. Valdric felt the words land like blows. So I created a crisis, Dreveth continued. One that would weaken him, isolate him, make him desperate. And when he failed to save his people, when the great Alpha King proved himself inadequate, I would step in. The savior, the new ruler, the one who could finally make Valcrest what it was always meant to be. Except I found the cure, Vera said. Dreveth's smile thinned. An inconvenience. One I'm about to correct. He snapped his fingers. The twisted wolves lunged. Valdric met them with teeth and claws, tearing into corrupted flesh, but there were too many. For every one he brought down, 2 more took its place. They moved without pain, without self-preservation, driven only by the command to destroy. He heard Vera scream, not in fear, in fury. She had grabbed a torch from the wall and was swinging it at the wolves that circled her, keeping them at bay through sheer ferocity. But she couldn't fight forever. Neither could he. A wolf caught his shoulder, fangs sinking deep. Another raked claws across his flank. Blood. His blood, splattered across the stone floor. He was going to die here. They both were. Enough. Draveth's voice cut through the chaos. The wolves pulled back, leaving Valdric bleeding on the floor, barely able to hold his form. I think the king understands his position now. Valdric shifted back to human. The pain was excruciating. Wounds that had been manageable as a wolf now screamed across his human body. Vera ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him. No. No, no. Touching. Draveth moved closer. But unnecessary. You see, I don't actually need to kill either of you. The ritual requires silver blood, willingly or unwillingly given. And I've discovered that emotional distress makes the blood so much more potent. He gestured, and two of the twisted wolves seized Vira, dragging her away from Valdric. Let her go. Valdric tried to rise. His legs wouldn't hold him. I'm going to give you a choice, Your Majesty. Draveth pulled a dagger from his belt, long, curved, wickedly sharp. Watch her die slowly, or abdicate. Sign the papers, renounce your throne, and I'll let her live long enough to be useful. Don't. Vera struggled against the wolves holding her. Valdric, don't. He'll kill you anyway. Probably true. Draveth examined the blade. But I'm a man of some honor. I'll make it quick. Valdric looked at Vera. She was bloodied, bruised, held by monsters, and her eyes were blazing with defiance, with something that looked almost like, I'll do it, Valdric said. No, Vera screamed. Wise choice. Draveth produced a scroll from his robes. Sign here. Your blood is seal. Valdric reached for the scroll, and then he moved. Not toward the scroll, toward Vera. Faster than his broken body should have allowed, fueled by something beyond muscle and bone. He hit the wolves holding her like a battering ram. They went down. Vera went down. Valdric covered her with his body as Draveth screamed orders and the twisted wolves converged. The window shattered. A wolf, the color of moonlight, exploded through the glass, not massive like the corrupted ones, sleek and silver and impossibly fast. It tore through the twisted wolves like they were made of paper, movements precise and deadly. Elder Magister Helwyn. You! Draveth's face contorted. You were supposed to be contained. The silver wolf ignored him. She positioned herself between Draveth and his victims, hackles raised, teeth bared. Helwyn found me just after you arrived. Valdric's voice was ragged but steady. She confessed everything while we were talking. That's why I started to believe you. Draveth's face went white. She was never truly your ally. You threatened her grandchildren, held them hostage in the Eastern Tower. When she saw the mark on Vera's wrist at the choosing, she knew it was her only chance to stop you. She's been waiting for someone strong enough to end this. She also told me how to stop it. Valdric looked at Vira. Not just slow it, stop it completely. The bond, Vera whispered. The bond. He reached out, took her hand. But only if you choose it, truly choose it. Not because you have no other option, but because you want to. Valdric, I love you. The words fell out of him like they'd been waiting for years. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you spat at my feet. Maybe when you knelt beside that dying child. Maybe when you told me your hatred was all you had left. And I realized I wanted to give you something else. Tears streamed down Vera's face. You destroyed my home. I know. You killed people I loved. I know. I should hate you forever. You should. She was silent for a long moment. Then, I don't want to hate you anymore. It's exhausting. A sound escaped him. Half laugh, half sob. Is that a yes? It's a... Draveth moved. The dagger flashed toward Valdric's back. Vera saw it coming, twisted, threw herself between the blade and the man she had just decided not to hate. The metal sank into her chest. Everything stopped. Vera looked down at the dagger protruding from her body. She looked up at Valdric's horrified face. "Oh," she said softly, and collapsed. The scream that tore from Valdric's throat was not human. He caught her as she fell, her blood pouring over his hands, hot and red and wrong. Behind him, he heard Helwyn take Draveth down, heard the crack of bones, the wet sound of justice delivered. But none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the woman dying in his arms. Vera, stay with me." Her eyes were glazing, her breath came in short, wet gasps. "Bram," she whispered. "Tell Bram." "I tried. You're not dying. Do you hear me? You're not—" The bond. Helwyn's voice, close and urgent. The elder magister had shifted back, her ancient face streaked with tears. "If you bond now, while she still lives, the Silverblood's power will heal her. But you have to do it now." "How?" The words. The blood. The choice. Helwyn pressed something into his hand, a small silver knife. "You cut your palm. She cuts hers. You speak the vows. And you pray." Valdric didn't hesitate. He sliced his palm, pressed the knife into Vera's weakening hand, and helped her cut. Their blood mingled, silver threads appearing in the red, the mark of the silver blood responding. "I choose you," Valdric said. The words felt ancient, pulled from somewhere deeper than memory. In sickness and in strength, in shadow and in light. "I choose you, Vera of Sylvania, as my Luna, my equal, my heart." Vera's eyes found his, barely focused, barely conscious. "Say it back," Helwyn urged. "She has to say it back." "Vera, please." Her lips moved. "I choose. Yes, that's it. I choose. You." Light exploded through the room, not fire, moonlight. Pure, silver, impossibly bright. It poured from Vera's chest, from their joined hands, from the mark on her wrist that now blazed like a star. Valdric felt it hit him like a wave, not pain, power, connection. A thread weaving between them, binding their souls together in ways he couldn't understand, but could feel with absolute certainty. The dagger clattered to the floor, pushed out by healing flesh. Vera's wound closed, her breathing steadied, her eyes opened, and they were glowing silver. "Valdric," she breathed. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate and relieved and full of everything he'd been afraid he'd lost. She kissed him back. The withering broke that night. Across the kingdom, in every village and fortress and camp, the sickness simply stopped. Wolves caught mid-transformation completed their shifts and collapsed in exhausted relief. Children who had been dying opened their eyes and asked for their mothers. Warriors who had been unable to fight stood and roared with recovered strength. In the infirmary, Mira sat up in her bed and announced that her wolf had stopped screaming. In the kitchens, Serena opened her eyes for the first time in weeks and called her son's name. Bram ran to her so fast he knocked over 3 pots and didn't care. It was dawn before anyone had time to breathe. Vera sat in the ruined king's chambers, wrapped in a blanket someone had draped over her shoulders, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Valdric sat beside her. "Draveth is in the cells," he said quietly. "The ones you used to occupy. Helwyn says he'll stand trial before the full council." "What will happen to him?" "Justice." Valdric's voice was flat. "Real justice. Not vengeance. That would make me no better than him." Vera looked at him. At this man who had destroyed her world and then helped remake it. Who had changed because a stranger demanded it? Who had been willing to die rather than watch her suffer? "I still don't forgive you," she said. "Not completely, not yet. I know. But I want to. Eventually. Is that enough?" Valdric took her hand, gently, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. "It's more than I deserve," he said, "and more than I ever hoped for." They sat together in the rising light, hands intertwined, and the bond humming between them like a song. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was theirs. 6 months later. The wedding was not what anyone expected. There were no elaborate decorations, no foreign dignitaries, no political machinations disguised as celebration. Instead, the ceremony took place in the rebuilt Moon Temple of Sylvania, a gift from the Alpha King to the woman who had once been his prisoner. Vera wore silver, not because tradition demanded it, but because she wanted to. The color of her bloodline, the color of the power that had saved a kingdom. Valdric wore black, as always, but his eyes were soft as he watched her walk toward him down the aisle of the temple she had once called home. Bram carried the rings. He had grown taller in the past months. Happier, too, now that his mother was healthy, and his role had shifted from kitchen boy to something much more important. Official ring-bearer and adopted brother to the Luna, he had proclaimed when they offered him the position. Serena, watching from the front row, wiped her eyes and smiled. The vows were simple. "I choose you," Valdric said, and the words carried the weight of everything they had survived. "I choose you," Vera replied and meant it. When they kissed, the crowd cheered, wolves howling in celebration, children throwing flower petals, former enemies standing side by side as witnesses to something new. Helwyn, absolved of her crimes in exchange for her testimony against Draveth, stood at the edge of the crowd with tears on her ancient face. The past could not be erased, the dead could not be returned. The scars, both visible and invisible, would never fully fade. But from the ashes of war, something unexpected had grown. A king who had learned that strength meant more than conquest. A healer who had learned that love could exist where hatred once lived. A kingdom that had learned to choose hope over fear. And a small boy who stood between them, holding both their hands and said with perfect confidence, "I knew it would work out. I always know these things." Vera laughed. Valdric smiled, really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. And somewhere high above them, the moon shone silver and full, blessing what had finally been healed. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. These stories only exist because of you. Because you listen, you comment, you share, and that means more to me than you know. I'm so grateful you're here.